In breaking news, we now have our fifth temporary restraining order entered against the Trump administration on day 16 of the administration to go along with one preliminary injunction. That's 6 different losses. They are 0-6 at the Trump administration so far and their Department of Justice in front of federal judges, this time about Elon Musk and Doge and him rooting around in our financial and privacy and medical data information at the Treasury Department. I'm Michael Popok. You're on the MeidasTouch Network and Legal AF. Let's get to the new order that's in place with Judge Kollar-Kotelly in the District of Columbia. Judge Kollar-Kotelly. This is going to be the revenge of the judges of the DC Circuit against Donald Trump, all of which were horrified by the pardon of the Jan 6 defendants, Judge Kollar-Kotelly among them, and now she's handling all of these cases against his administration. You do the math. The case I'm talking about is Alliance for Retired Americans versus Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, filed by Norm Eisen's public interest group. And they had filed this suit back on the 3rd of February, and already we have an agreement on a temporary restraining order to give the judge more time to consider the merits of the case on what we call a preliminary injunction. But this is the 5th TRO issued by a federal judge in 4 different courthouses in America. That's not a great start for the Department of Justice under Donald Trump's leadership. Let's talk about this particular case. This one's about the Bureau of Financial Services, a little known, but probably one of the most important bureaus or departments of the government that impacts everybody's life. $5 trillion of money is collected through the Internal Revenue Service. $5 trillion of payments are made to Americans through it. It is the nation's checkbook when it comes to things like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits, disability payments, student loans, you name it, it comes through the Bureau of Financial Services. And of course, Elon Musk and Donald Trump wanted to get their greedy little hands on the software and the servers and the information, because if they can't stop funding through the front door, they want to gum up the works on the payment system in the back door, meaning we're all jeopardized. Those that depend on government assistance are all jeopardized by Elon Musk. And we have privacy and data breach violations under federal law. Let me just read to you from the complaint, and then I'll tell you about the agreed upon temporary restraining order and what that all means in Judge Kollar-Kotelly's courtroom. There was a filing on the 3rd, a complaint for declaratory and injunctive relief. It's to have the judge declare that certain things are unconstitutional or violation of law and to stop them or enjoin them. Here's the allegations, which I think put it in a nutshell. Let me just read you from pages 2 and 3 of the complaint. Paragraph 2, millions of individuals engage in financial transactions with the federal government. The government collects trillions of dollars from individuals who pay their income taxes, obtain government services, and pay back loans like student loans and other debts that they owe. People also receive money from the federal government, Social Security, retirement, disability payments, federal tax refunds, veterans benefits, salaries and wages for federal workers. Are all an example of that particular operation of the Fiscal Service. Now, let's go on to the next paragraph, paragraph 3. The job of effectuating these financial transactions for the federal government belongs to the Department of the Treasury, operating through the Bureau of Fiscal Service. To carry out its duties, the department collects and maintains sensitive personal and financial information about the individuals who are the counterparties to the transaction, either side of the government. Names, social security numbers, birth dates, birthplaces, home addresses, telephone numbers, bank account information, and I would also suggest medical information when it comes to disability are in the department's records. Paragraph 4 of the complaint. Federal laws protect sensitive personal and financial information from improper disclosure and misuse, including by barring disclosure to individuals who lack a lawful or legitimate need for it. In his first week as Treasury Secretary, Defendant Bessent, that's your new Treasury Secretary, you'll look on the money soon and see his name there, violated these restrictions. Elon Musk and or other Doge members, that's the Department of Government Efficiency, that fake department that Donald Trump created to cause maximum chaos, had sought access to the Bureau's records for some time, only to be rebuffed by the employee then in charge of the Bureau. Right. That's a guy who for 30 years made sure your payments were properly deposited into your bank account or into your mailbox. And he first resisted. And then when he was suspended, he quit. Within a week of being sworn in as Treasury Secretary, Bessent placed the civil servant on leave. This is the guy who ran the trains for 30 years, and granted Doge-affiliated officials full access to the Bureau's data and computer systems that house them. He did so without making a public announcement, meaning he violated the Administrative Procedures Act, providing any legal justification or explanation for his decision, violating criminal law, or undertaking the process required by law for altering the agency's disclosure policies. Paragraph 6, the scale of the intrusion into individuals' privacy is massive and unprecedented. Millions of people cannot avoid engaging in financial transactions with the government. And then at the end of the paragraph 6, and because defendants' actions and decisions are shrouded in secrecy, individuals will not have even basic information about what financial information or personal information that the defendants are sharing with outside parties. Paragraph 7, people who must share information with the government should not be forced to share information with Elon Musk, and federal law says they do not have to. The Privacy Act of 1974 and the Internal Revenue Code with respect to taxpayer information make it unlawful for the Treasury Secretary to hand over access to the Bureau's records to an individual, to Elon Musk or other members of Doge. And it goes on. So now we've got the new order. Now what happened is this. Very smartly, Judge Kollar-Kotelly, who's been on the bench for about 30 years, she got the parties together, basically indicated to them, I'm going to enter this temporary restraining order. We could have a hearing over it. We could have another loss here for the Trump administration, or you guys can agree to some sort of temporary restraining order that the plaintiffs are okay with, and the Trump administration sees the writing on the wall and will enter, and submit it to me and I'll enter it. Or you can make me make the ruling. All of this is in the temporary restraining order phase. There's effectively two main phases when you're asking a judge for an injunction. First, you get the temporary restraining order. That's where the judge looks under the hood and says, yeah, I think you're going to win on your case down the road. There's enough evidence, and I see a lawful violation. I see violations of the law here. I'm going to give the temporary restraining order to this party, the movant, the person who moved for the temporary restraining order, subject to me having full briefing, a better record, more evidence, more evidentiary hearing, testimony, affidavits and things, maybe in 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. As long as the TRO is in place, of course, the plaintiff doesn't care when the preliminary injunction hearing happens because they already got the stay or the block. So she's telling everybody, I'm going to get around to the preliminary injunction. Could be a month from now. In the meantime, work out the TRO. And if you can't, come back and tell me, and I'll handle it. Well, Trump administration, I actually, surprisingly, I said I didn't think they were going to agree to this because they seem to just be kamikaze pilots in courtrooms. But they did agree. And here's what we've got so far in the order that's been entered. It's a proposed order. With the consent of the parties, the court defers ruling on the motion for temporary restraining order as follows. In other words, it is a temporary restraining order, but it's by agreement. The defendants will not provide. So when you hear defendants, that means the Treasury Secretary of the Trump administration. They will not provide access to any payment record or payment system of records maintained by or within the Bureau of Fiscal Service, except that the defendants may provide access to any of the following people. Tom Krause, a special government employee in the Department of Treasury. He can only do read-only. Marco Elez, another person in the Department of Treasury with read-only. Any person who is an employee but not a special government employee who has need for the record or system of records in the performance of his duties. Any person who's entitled to access the records and any person who's entitled to access the records under the IRS code. Now, look, I don't think this goes far enough. Let me read to you, for instance, what the actual injunction is sought in the case. It's much broader than that. And I think she'll ultimately go here. But this is what Norm Eisen's group, on behalf of us, is asked for. A declaration that the Trump administration's decision, this is on page 18 of the complaint, to implement a system by which Elon Musk or other Doge-affiliated officials may access the Bureau's records and other personal information contained therein is unlawful. stop or enjoin the defendants from continuing to permit such access, and enjoin defendants to ensure the future disclosure will occur only in accordance with the Privacy Act, the Internal Revenue Code, or other privacy provisions, and grant that injunction. See, that's much broader than just a payment record. So, I think now I know why the Trump administration took the deal. It's a much narrower TRO than what was sought by the complaint. Doesn't mean that the group that brought the suit is not going to be able to obtain that information, obtain that injunction at the contours that they're asking for. Just means they don't have it right now. But it is a major loss for the Trump administration. Just to summarize where we are, helps me keep it straight. We got 5 temporary restraining orders already, 1 preliminary injunction, which is a higher level of injunction against Donald Trump's policies about birthright citizenship, where we have 2 temporary restraining orders. We have 1 temporary restraining order and 1 preliminary injunction from 2 different judges. We have 2 about the federal funding freeze, 2 temporary restraining orders, and we've got a temporary restraining order to stop Donald Trump from putting transgender women in a male prison. That's where we are now. More to come. 32 cases are already been filed. Probably by the time this hits the airwaves, it'll be 35 or 36 cases. We're averaging 2 cases a day against the Trump administration, who's currently 0-5. I'll continue to follow it right here on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. And take a minute, come on over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel, in collaboration with MTN, and hit the subscribe button there as we continue to grow that pro-democracy channel. Till my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.